Okay, you've heard tonight's audio recording of Donald Trump apparently committing federal crimes. Now let's listen to Donald Trump's defense. He had some things to say about his defense this weekend. We will go through a lightning round with our panel reacting to what Donald Trump had to say this weekend about this case. Let's listen to the first thing he had to say.
Charging a former president of the United States under the Espionage Act of 1917. That's like making nuclear weapons in your basement, isn't it? An act for a crime so heinous that only the death penalty would do is one of the most outrageous and vicious legal theories ever put forward in an American court of law. The Espionage Act has been used to go after traitors and spies. It has nothing to do with a former president legally keeping his own documents.
Andrew Weissman, the Espionage Act has nothing to do with a former president legally keeping his own documents. True or false?
Well, that would be true if we were talking about a former president's own documents. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the former president keeping the government's documents, not his own documents. And also, I noticed that he doesn't in any way discuss the obstruction statute, which, the obstruction statute, you can't sort of do this kind of grandiose talk about because it governs obstructing a criminal investigation when you lie to investigators, which is exactly what's charged here.
All right, so we just heard Donald Trump trying to talk about his defense, and we doesn't sound like we heard a defense there. Let's listen to the next one.
Under the Presidential Records Act, which is civil, not criminal, done in 1977, civil, I had every right to have these documents, personal belongings, in boxes.
Bradley Moss, I had every right to have these documents. True or false?
That's going to be big old false. No, that's not what the Presidential Records Act did. The whole thing was constructed after Nixon to make clear these are not yours. They're the property of the United States. No, you didn't have any right to them, especially not at Mar-a-Lago.
So would you say he got that exactly backwards?
Completely 100% backwards. I don't know who's giving him guidance. Maybe it's Tom Fitton.
All right, let's see how long it takes to get through his entire defense. Here's Donald Trump's next defense.
In other words, whatever documents a president decides to take with him, he has the absolute right to take them. He has the absolute right to keep them, or he can give them back to NARA if he wants. He talks to them like we were doing, and he can do that if he wants. That's the law, and it couldn't be more clear.
Andrew Weissman, is that the law?
It not only is not the law, but there is evidence that Donald Trump knows it's not the law. There will be attorneys, according to reporting, both White House attorneys and his personal attorneys, telling him that he has to give this back. So not only is that not a statement of the correct law, but he knows it. So again, it'll be interesting to see whether Jack Smith decides whether he's going to play these kinds of things, which are called false exculpatory statements, because they're so false, or whether he's just going to go with his affirmative case. But this is just absolutely wrong.
Bradley Moss, is this Donald Trump just trying to talk directly to the jury pool in southern Florida?
It's talking to the jury pool, and it's talking to his base. Remember, this is all a long game on his part of politics. His best legal defense right now is a political offense. It's to get back into the Oval Office. He's not a dumb man. He knows what's going on here in reality, and he knows that his only method of survival here to avoid prison time is to get elected again. That means he's got to play the tough guy. He's got to be grandiose and, boast and everything right now. But yet he knows this isn't true. Just like Andrew was saying, he's been told that it's not true. He's going to play it up for his base.